The UN Climate Summit ended in Egypt with a deal to provide funding for vulnerable countries as they suffer the impact of climate change in what's known as loss and damage. But while the talks were going on in Somalia, people were paying the price for the climate crisis with their lives. The worst drought in 40 years has left millions of people on the brink of starvation. Our correspondent Mariel Muller traveled to Baidoa at the center of the hunger crisis and would like to warn that this report contains disturbing images.
These children are fighting for their lives. From all over Somalia, those most in need get referred to this hospital in the capital Mogadishu. Many die on the way. Little Amina Abdi weighs less than half of what a healthy child her age should. For days, she's been in a coma.
Amina Abdi now, she is 7 kg. Unusually, normally she was supposed to be 16 kg. She came with severe acute malnutrition with critical condition, which is called shock. Now she is a terminal case.
A terminal case at only 4 years old. This is the impact of the extreme drought that's devastating Somalia. It's the worst in 40 years. Baidoa is 250 kilometers west of the capital. It is seen as the epicenter of the hunger crisis. The situation in the hospital here is desperate.
According to the UN, a child is being admitted for medical treatment every minute. Famine hasn't been officially declared yet by the government, but a doctor told me, based on the cases they're seeing, the situation now is even worse than during the last famine in 2011, when 250,000 people died.
1.5-year-old Mariam was admitted a few days ago. She's showing typical symptoms of malnutrition: diarrhea, vomiting, and whooping cough. For her mother and aunt, the weight is unbearable. I feel so sad for my sister. I pray to Allah that she will recover, and also that He will alleviate the drought. Like most Somalis, both were livestock farmers until the drought took everything from them. 4 rainy seasons have failed, and there are fears that a 5th will now fail too. High food prices due to the war in Ukraine, decades-long civil war, and climate change have created an unprecedented humanitarian disaster, aid organizations warn. Millions are on the brink of starvation. The United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, says $1 billion in aid is needed to avoid the situation getting worse.
We have 500,000 children that are severely acutely malnourished, which basically means that if they don't receive assistance timely, they are just simply going to die.
800,000 people have sought refuge in and around Baidoa. They've doubled the city's population. Mayor Abdullahi Watin says he needs long-term solutions to deal with the crisis.
Somalia is one of the affected areas by the climate change. But what will happen after the drought ends? Do we wait until another famine comes, or we still come up with initiatives that we need to mitigate future shocks?
He expects help from the world's biggest polluters. While African countries contribute less than 3% to climate change, they are among the most vulnerable to its impact.
Joining the program now from Nairobi, Kenya, is Wanjira Maathai, the Managing Director for Africa and Global Partnerships at the World Resources Institute. Welcome to DW News Africa. Now, after years of debate, the world has finally agreed on a loss and damage fund at the just concluded COP27 summit. In your eyes, is this a game changer?
Well, thank you for having me, first of all. But yes, it is a game changer. When you consider that this has been 30 years in the making, a symbol, something that shows an acknowledgement that we have absolutely differentiated responsibility with respect to the crisis that climate is wreaking across this planet. So yes, it was a game changer.
Now, the formation of the scheme is still in process, but could you sum up how you would propose that the system should work?
Well, I certainly would not pretend to know how the system should work, but some of the principles of the loss and damage facility and why it was important to have a loss and damage facility is surely the swiftness of action, the scale of action. Look at a country like Pakistan, Nigeria, Chad, all of which suffered significant flooding very quickly, and now Kenya and the Horn of Africa suffering significant droughts. What happens in situations like that, the frontline communities face the brunt. It is quick, it is fast, and the losses and damages happen pretty relatively fast. So we need something that works quickly, financing that flows in the significant sums that are required, and they flow swiftly to the countries that need them. So this is the biggest opportunity the gap that needs to be filled with respect to financing. The modalities of the fund will be worked through the rest of this year by the Transition Committee. And so we expect that a lot of those pieces will be addressed, but swiftness is the biggest one.
Speaking of swiftness, some of the wealthy countries are already failing to deliver on their existing climate funding pledges. So how can we ensure or even trust that they'll deliver this time?
Well, this has been the challenge, of course. The trust deficit so deep with the lack of delivery of the 100 billion for adaptation. But we have to believe that this is different. I was really encouraged by Simon Steele's focus in his remarks, the new executive secretary of the UNFCCC, that accountability will be his major effort. He will place a lot of attention on delivery and accountability. We need to see accountability. That's what multilateral systems are about. Let's just say that we never expected loss and damage to make it to the agenda a few years ago. It made it onto the agenda, and today we have the decision to create a financing facility. That's significant. I think the rest of it should follow, especially because of what we've seen with respect to the losses and damages, and that they're not always geographically related. We've seen heat waves in Europe. We've seen forest fires in North America. We've seen a lot of loss and damage across the board. So we know that this is not a unique situation. But what we must acknowledge, and what this fund acknowledges, is that the most vulnerable among us are hit harder.
And on that note of the accountability, the payments into the fund are expected to be voluntary. But on that same note, can it be sustainable if no one actually bears responsibility?
Well, I think people are starting to acknowledge responsibility. By creating this fund, we know now, as the science has gotten tighter, the science of attribution is very clear. Pollution in the north is causing an increase in temperatures, and those temperatures are causing the changes in climate that we're seeing and wreaking havoc. Today, we can tell that a storm is climate-related, a flood is climate-related. So attribution is a lot stronger now. So I don't think we can say it's difficult to tell. What we need is the political will to acknowledge and take responsibility. That's where the effort should be, and that's where the effort will be.
Okay. Wanjira Mathai, thank you very much for speaking to us.